Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya, and we are here at KubeCon in Seattle, and we have with us Boris Renski. Are you still CMO, or you have changed the role at the company?
No, I am probably the most stable position in the company. Ever since the company was founded, I've been the co-founder and CMO.
Yeah, and you still
haven't changed ever
never
since
got any
then.
promotion,
Never got any
demoted.
promotion, and never got any demotion. So,
So very consistent performance throughout.
yes, that's right.
What are you
Very
doing here at
consistent.
KubeCon? Because when I knew in early days, it was like pure play OpenStack company. But
Yeah.
the company has evolved, tremendously.
Yeah, well, I mean, OpenStack was the thing that got us onto, the radar, I would say, in the infrastructure space in general. But even a while back, even before Kubernetes was around, we started just out of the necessity getting involved in other projects, right? Like things like Ceph or OpenContrail, because OpenStack is just, an API standard for, managing VMs on the private cloud. But you need a lot of other things that plug into it. And of course, when Kubernetes started becoming popular, we got involved in that as well. And in fact, during the first couple of years of Kubernetes development, we were among, I think, the top 5 contributors to the upstream Kubernetes, and we're still very much involved in a number of initiatives. Like we run a project called Vertlet, which is an alternative to KubeVirt. We also work on this thing called KDC, Kubernetes Docker in Docker cluster, which is what a lot of teams use to actually develop new features in Kubernetes. It's kind of like DevStack, equivalent of DevStack and OpenStack. Kubernetes has a KDC, we do that, and just a bunch of other things. But most importantly, of course, a lot of the customers that use Mirantis-based, MCP-based private cloud, a lot of the workloads that they're deploying are container and Kubernetes-based workloads. So a while back, we've started just, delivering Kubernetes on top of OpenStack to the customers. And as Kubernetes becomes more and more of a common pattern for, building and managing new applications, we're delivering that on-premise to our customers while leveraging all of the expertise in the kind of underlying plumbing. Because, Kubernetes on-premise, you cannot just run Kubernetes on bare metal. Kubernetes needs block storage. You need to do networking, you need to take care of multi-tenancy, and even Google runs Kubernetes inside VMs. So all of that plumbing and all of that expertise that we got back from the OpenStack on-premise days is kind of, what we deliver in the Kubernetes context. So while most companies focus on kind of like cross-cloud Kubernetes, we feel there is, a lot of very competent players in that space that build like a Kubernetes PaaS or multi-cloud Kubernetes. We feel that we as a company are best positioned to solve the hard problems related to actually running Kubernetes on-premise and doing the plumbing underneath. So that's what we're doing here, Kubernetes on-premise. A very long answer to arguably a very short question.
Very short question. That was expected from you either way. So
yeah, I'll try to be brief next time.
Mirantis also announced Kubernetes on bare metal.
Yeah. So Kubernetes on bare metal that we announced, that was I think a couple of months ago. So it's also based on Mirantis Cloud Platform.
Right.
It uses all of the same lifecycle management and monitoring tooling. But the use case for that is edge, small, compact clusters. And in our case, a big chunk of our business comes from service providers. So we are targeting that at this point specifically for the service provider edge. Because when you talk about edge, there's many different edges. There's like device edge, there's service provider edge, there's like far edge and fog, and like within even the telco industry, edge is like, measured in latency to the endpoint. It's not like a specific thing. So in our case, it's like service provider edge use case. And we leverage the project that I just mentioned, Vertlet, that enables you to use Kubernetes as a resource scheduler for VMs. So you have Kubernetes running on bare metal, you can have Kubernetes actually spin up containers, or you can have Kubernetes spin up VMs, and those VMs you can talk to Metal, so they can do all this SRIOV, DPDK based acceleration stuff. For telco use case, that's very relevant.
Excellent. And what trend do you see in terms of adoption of Kubernetes on bare metal?
I think it's going to be kind of a gradual process whereby the existing operations and security tooling, which to date in private data center primarily revolves around the construct of a VM, will be re-architected and just devolve into like a bare metal operations tooling for Kubernetes. So if you, for example, like go and try and download some white papers by VMware, who is, the authority on the, VM space in general, and they have a bunch of literature talking about, is container better than VM? Should I run container on bare metal? Should I run it on VM? They, I think, make a very credible argument that, like Kubernetes and containers today, you can't run on bare metal. You still need to do a lot of things underneath that will ensure security. You need to have, understandable operational constructs and tooling around it. And most of the private cloud world still thinks in terms of just VMs, and most of the tooling is built around the construct of VM. But as containers and Kubernetes becomes a more and more common pattern for building new applications, that layer will gradually just like devolve into becoming like, an operations security layer for running containers Kubernetes. So it won't be like right away, but over a period of time, some of the components will have to be re-architected, and it'll still be there, but people will primarily run containers on bare metal, and the VM construct will kind of cease to exist altogether.
And what will happen to the Kubernetes distributions that we see? I mean, we have seen that in OpenStack world as well,
Yeah.
How significant will be the distributions? Because one of the problem that users face, is that there is so much latency between the upstream Kubernetes versus what they are getting from a vendor.
Yeah, so I think that that's also evolving towards decreasing that latency. And if you talk, if you listen to like all the different vendors that deliver distributions in that layer, most of them advertise how close to upstream they are. But I think in general, the entire model ultimately will evolve close towards kind of a continuous delivery model. Because if you look at, how big guys like, Pinterest or Square or, eBay even are doing a lot of their infrastructure, they build a lot of the components internally from just upstream code base. They validate them through, the CD pipeline and the tests that they build, and then they roll it out, and it's a continuous process. There is no third-party vendor in the picture oftentimes that actually like brings you the, the true correct version of, a product, a distribution, which you then roll out. And I think that over time, more and more people will start embracing that model. We were, starting to lean in that direction. And this has been historically one of the biggest differentiation for us as a company, is that we supplement all of the infrastructure that we deliver with this continuous delivery tooling. And our model, we have 2 tiers where we just provide support, following a very similar kind of a model that folks like Red Hat do. And then we have a managed tier where actually we do all of that continuous updating of the infrastructure for you. So we have effectively like managed infrastructure on-prem. And I think that the whole industry is going to be leaning more towards that direction.
Since you mentioned Red Hat, that also leads to the consolidation that is happening. Heptio was also acquired.
Yeah.
Red Hat acquired CoreOS, Protecto, and then so
yeah,
what
it's
do
like
you
a
think?
Russian doll, like shook everything, like got into IBM. Yeah.
So what do you think? What kind of further consolidation you see will be happening going forward? When you see there are like 50 or 100 vendors here.
Yeah, probably Rancher will get bought. I mean, they're a big Kubernetes. I mean, like a lot of these consolidations that happened, they, kind of carried. We did it because of Kubernetes flag, Like, IBM acquired Red Hat because it's all because of their OpenShift. Obviously, Red Hat acquired CoreOS before that because of Kubernetes. Heptio, same thing. So I think that some of the big vendors that haven't made a move yet will have to go and kind of respond somehow, right? And respond by acquiring some of the other companies in the space. So I think that will happen. I can't really speculate like who's gonna acquire who, but definitely I think like the wave is not over. There's gonna be more consolidation that'll happen in the Kubernetes space. Yeah.
Okay, so this, we have talked a lot of times, but this is the question I've never asked you. So when you're not traveling around, and evolving Mirantis, the market evolving, what do you do in your free time? What are your hobbies? How do you have fun?
Yeah, so until recently, one of my hobbies was cave diving. So I'm an avid scuba diver, and I've been scuba diving since, trying to remember, like the year 94, for a long time. And I kind of gradually, and I was never like, there's scuba divers that like the different fish or the different plants. I was never really fascinated with that. I was really more interested in like the spectacular underwater landscape, seeing like big things, seeing like interesting like big coral reefs or like big animals underwater or wrecks. And I kind of started doing more and more of that, and then ultimately I got to trying and doing some cave diving. And I think that like the instructor that was I was talking to said like cave diving is very peculiar, because once you go cave diving, all the other diving is going to be really boring for you. So I did a bunch of cave diving, and then indeed all the other diving became boring to me. And because cave diving requires significant time commitment, like you have to travel to Florida or Mexico and spend like a week doing it, it's I've been doing it like less and less and less. So I've ended up basically having no hobbies, just working. So
what is the risk factor between cave diving versus just regular scuba diving?
Cave diving is riskier because you get lost or run out of air, and you try to come up and there is no up. So the biggest risk, the most common way that people die, is they get lost. Something happens and they can't find their way out. Typically you follow like a line. There's like a golden line, they call it, that goes for all the caves. And then typically there are non-golden, like just regular lines, you call them jumps, that you can go. You can go off a golden line, you tie off your rope, you tie it off to a jump line, you go down the jump line, and you can do multiple jumps. But some of the people that like have done a certain dive many times, they know the cave very well. They're like, screw it, I don't need that. I'm just not gonna tie the rope, tie the line. I'm just gonna like go without it. And oftentimes they can't find a way back, because like when you're diving, like you're looking this way, the cave looks this direction very different than it looks this way. You can come out of like a hole, but you don't notice that there's actually like 3 holes behind you, and they look completely different. And then you come back and you're like, oh, wait a second, where did I come out of? And the whole thing is like very, very hard to navigate unless you follow a line. So because of that, cave divers tend to die a lot, but it's worth the risk. It's like kind of going, it's going to a place where very few people have gone. It's like landing on Mars. You can dive a certain cave and you can be like, I'm probably one of the 50 people in the entire world that have been to this particular place. So it's pretty thrilling and exciting.
So this is, now I have 3 people that I know who do scuba and cave diving. One is Linus Torvalds, one is Dirk Honde from.
Oh, really?
He's a very
I should go.
Yeah, he's that's his hobby. He go for diving. And Dirk Honde from VMware.
Okay.
He's actually fellow diver. He goes with Linus. And now the third one is you. So you guys should try to do a joint.
You should try and do it. You should facilitate it. Because when I was starting out, one of the common things we were doing is like liveaboard. You get a bunch of people on the boat, and you dive wrecks like for a week, and you like everybody bonds and stuff like that. So you should do like an infrastructure themed liveaboard boat and invite like all of the people in infrastructure space,
And then
open source infrastructure space that do diving.
And then set up the camera and do the interview.
And then set up a camera and do the interviews, exactly. Exactly.
Mix the work and,
Exactly.
Boris, once again, thanks for talking today.
Yeah.
And hopefully, well, not hopefully, certainly we'll be seeing you again at the next conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much.